Hello, everyone, and welcome to the APT and Cybersecurity LinkedIn Live event. My name is Aaron Sill, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Mavro. Today, we're excited to welcome Rick Howard. Rick fails to bring... Well, I'm sorry, Mike.
It's just you and me, Alex.
Yeah, I think so. No, I think something happened on our side.
Yeah.
And due to that, he will be back, I'm sure.
Well, all of a sudden, it's lunchtime here. And,
Oh, I
all
see.
these people,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people here all of a sudden.
In Romania, it's 7 p.m. already.
Yeah. It's bedtime for you.
Oh my gosh, gentlemen, I'm very sorry. I had a little snafu.
No worries, Aaron.
Oh my gosh. So today, we're excited to welcome Rick Howard. Rick, thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to talk about kind of a big topic for today, and it's about military network defense to commercial APT strategies. Rick, can you do me a favor, and initially just give me a little bit about your background, and especially kind of what you were doing around with the U.S. Army and the Army CERT, and then what are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm an old Army guy, U.S. Army. I was in for almost 30 years. I started out with communications, tactical networks, and then garrison networks, which led to internet stuff, which led to how do you secure that stuff. And then my last job in the Army, I was the commander of the Army's Commuter Emergency Response Team. And my job was to coordinate offensive and defensive operations for the U.S. Army. But this is a long time ago, back in the 2000s. So that's how I got here. When I retired, I've been doing cybersecurity for the rest of that time, and I've been a serial CISO. I've been a CISO for a government contractor, a CSO for a large security vendor, and then my last gig was a CSO for a small media company startup. So I've been around for a long time.
So can you tell me a little bit about the book that you wrote, the Cybersecurity First Principles?
Yeah. I've been, like I said, doing it a long time, but I got to tell you, about 10 years ago, I got this nagging feeling at the back of my neck that all of that effort that I had put in all those jobs, spending gazillions of dollars, doing what everybody else was doing, putting in the best practices of the day. But I couldn't convey to senior leadership if what we were doing was actually working, right? I couldn't tell you if all that money we spent was actually reducing the risk to our business. So I started thinking about, why is that true? And what if we started over from scratch, started over with first principles and built everything up from that, right? Are you guys familiar with first principles, the idea of it?
A little bit. I know we're going to kind of go into a segment in a little bit, kind of talk about it. But if you want to explain, and then what we'll do is we'll go back to it.
Sure.
Definitely.
It's basically reducing the problem down to its essential essence, right? And it should apply to everybody in our space. So I started thinking about that for, the last 5 years, and finally wrote it all down and published a book on it. So I can tell you what I think the absolute cybersecurity first principle. Here it is. It's just a Twitter line. This is what everybody should be doing with their InfoSec programs. Reduce the probability of a material cyber event within the next business cycle. So and we can discuss whether or not you like that idea, but if you buy it, then everything you do after that should support that essential principle.
Fantastic. And
that's what the book's about. Yeah.
So we'll definitely walk into that. But let's first, because we kind of break this into segments, Alex and I. But let's first talk about kind of a little bit about your military foundation and that kind of the transition, right?
Sure.
So when you led the Army CERT, what did network defenses look like back then? Mm-hmm. And kind of what do you see, what still applies today to that?
The internet was pretty new, right? We didn't really know what we were dealing with. my first year and a half in command, the biggest security problem we had was a young English hacker who had owned all the military networks, not just the Army guys, but the Navy, the Air Force, and everybody else. His motivation was that he was sure that there was evidence of aliens in the military networks, and if he could just have databases, he would find that evidence and give it to everybody. We were kind of on the sidelines cheering him on. We kind of hoped that he'd find it, right? But so it wasn't that serious compared to what we are today.
I can
And then
imagine.
about a year and a half into my tenure, we noticed that the Chinese were all over us also. All right.
Oh,
All of
wow.
a sudden, that upped our game. It became a very serious intelligence gathering and reason of what they were doing.
So what kind of felt most different when you moved from the military into the private sector?
Oh, well, the military and operations guy is kind of the important person. Whenever somebody like me in the military, the ACERT commander, would say, let's go do this, everybody would go do that. When you went to the civilian world, and my equivalent might be the CISO or the SOC director or something, or the intelligence director. For most organizations, those are cost centers, right? And
Oh, yeah.
it's really difficult to convince people that things need to go in a certain direction. That's really that I had to.
So how much does kind of understanding offensive thinking help defenders do their jobs better?
Well, I think there's a number of strategies that you can use to defend the enterprise, and I talk about them in the book. But they basically break down into two kinds. There's the passive kind, where you're just sort of putting in prevention controls for every known bad guy, right? It doesn't matter who they are, just common sense stuff, locking the doors, bolting the windows, making sure that nobody can find their way into the stuff you're trying to protect. So that's one way to do it. It's very passive. It's stuff like vulnerability management and, patching and those kinds of things. But the other strategy that we invented back in 2010, I call it the intrusion kill chain prevention strategy, where you actually devise prevention controls and for known adversary behavior, right? And what that means is, it sounds like that'd be really hard to do, because I always ask people how many adversary campaigns are active on the internet on any given day.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think that is?
A lot.
A lot. Alex, what do you think? Is it big, small, thousands? Is it hundreds?
Alex would know more than I would.
It
Alex?
depends. It depends on what you have over there. I think it's a lot.
Well, it may surprise you to learn that it's around 500.
Really?
It's not that more than that. And if you just
okay.
and my evidence for that is, just look at the MITRE attack framework.
Yes.
Okay.
Those folks track known adversary campaigns, and depending on how you count it, it's about 250 to 300. Now,
Oh, so less.
that framework tracks mostly nation states. They don't really track cybercrime. But if you talk to other vendors like Microsoft or CrowdStrike, they say they're tracking about 100 or so. So it's anywhere from 350 to 500, depending on how you count it. So it's not that many when you say it out loud. You could track it in a spreadsheet if you wanted to. I don't recommend it, but you could do it. But it is possible to actually put prevention controls in place for whatever security tools you have deployed in your environment for every known adversary campaign that's out there. So that's how you have to think about it.
Yeah.
So one last question before I kind of switch it over to Alex. What was kind of the mind shift from moving from the military to the commercial was kind of the hardest for making that move?
Oh, I mean, just as a cyber person working
Exactly.
in a civilian job?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I would just say that my first year, I knew that I had a military background and I could come off kind of brusque and to the point, and I didn't take a lot of shenanigans going on. So I toned it down. I tried to tone my leadership style down in my first year. And then when I got my first performance review in my first civilian job, my boss said, man, you really got to tone it down. Okay, you are really, you're really coming at these guys hard. So yeah,
You're like, they're not following orders.
yeah, they're not doing what I want them to do.
They're not doing what I do.
I think you scare too much.
Hopefully, I've learned how to do that in subsequent years. But yeah, that was the first comment.
Yeah.
Aaron, any other questions?
No, I'm good, Alex. If you want to kind of move to the next subject, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Before moving to military lessons for commercial APT defense, I would like to ask Rick, would you like to answer to the question of Michael, or do you want to keep it for the end? How would you prefer?
Let's wait till the end.
Okay, sure. Then in that case, I'll go to my first question on the next segment. What parts of military cyber defense translate well to the private sector?
Well, I think it all can, right? It's really the mind shift is developing a defensive campaign for actual known adversary behavior, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, really hard to do, okay? Really hard to do because it takes an intel shop, it takes people monitoring what bad guys are doing and what they're changing, right? And it's really difficult to devise controls for the security stack that you have, trying to match adversary behavior. Let's say Wicked Spider, right? Wicked Spider, I don't know how many steps they do when they cross the kill chain, but they may have 100 steps in their attack campaign. So what you have to do is look at each of those steps and look at the security tools that you have and say, what prevention control can I put in place that will either see them or stop them? So it's very manpower intensive, which, by the way, might be starting to change as we start to deploy large language models in this space. We may be able to get this done a lot quicker.
Yeah, sure. To go to the next question, where does that comparison break down?
I just think that many civilian organizations don't think in those terms, right? So when you broach the subject with them, it's like, oh my God, you have a horn growing out of your head. What are you talking about? Why don't I just patch and vulnerability scan and red team and crisis management, right? So it's just a new thing. It's a learning thing. And I would direct your audience, if you want to learn about this stuff, the initial paper was written by Lockheed Martin back in 2010. It's a very long title, but it has intrusion kill chains in it. You'll find it on the web. It's free to read. It's not that technical, but it explains what all this stuff is.
So Lockheed did invent the kill chain, that cycle.
They're the ones that published the first paper on it. They get
credit, don't they?
Yeah. They're the first ones to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
They do get pushback from other people who were thinking like that. Basically, the military. All right, they've been thinking about that for about a decade. But nobody published any papers, so Lockheed Martin gets credit.
Yeah, you win, you publish, you win.
Indeed. Okay, why did it take companies so long to focus on adversaries instead of just alerts and incidents?
Well, because that's what we were used to. I mean, it's all started back in the 90s, right?
Correct,
and
yeah.
You remember the tools that we had back in those days were basically cheap firewalls, not like the kinds of firewalls we have today. Basically fancy routers, right? And intrusion detection systems like Snort, if you really
I remember.
Now, right? Right? And antivirus, right? And that's what we had. And so it was basically an exercise in keeping everything up to date with the latest signature. So that's what most of us learned. And most of us couldn't afford our own Intel shops. Didn't even know we could have our own Intel shops till much later, right? The big turning point, do you remember this, was back in like 2013 or 2014.
Yeah.
When Mandiant released the APT1 paper. Yeah. And they told everybody that, this one group, APT1, these are all the things that they do, and maybe we can put some prevention controls in place to stop them, right? So from the 1990s till 2015, we weren't really thinking about adversary protections.
But the main problem here, this is how I see. Many companies, they have a lot of budgets, they have a lot of tools, but there are no controls over there. That's the whole point. This is what I hear, what I saw.
Well, you're right. With the number of tools that everybody has, I forget what the actual number is these days. But remember, we started back in the 90s with 3.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're a mid-sized organization, you probably have 50.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. And if you're a Fortune 500, it's probably a lot larger than that. And managing all that is just managing it, just keeping it running, and keeping it up to date with all it has to do. That's a big job, right? And it's the reason that I wrote the First Principles book, because I don't think that is really working that well. But you guys can tell me.
Yeah. Anyhow, soon we'll get there. So no worries. Aaron will be on the first principle and adversary strategy. Aaron? So,
Rick, what is kind of the first principle, if you kind of tell us, that you think is most organizations still miss?
There's a couple of things in the early days, right? The first things with people like me, my peer group, we convinced business leaders that cybersecurity risk was somehow different than all the other business risks.
Yeah.
And we got away with it. I can't believe they let us get away with that. It was so scary and technical that they let us approach the problem from a different standpoint than all the other business risks, like strategic or operational or financial, pick your risk. And that was a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake to let us get away with that. And so what I try to tell my peers now is it's all about reducing material risk. Whatever budget you have, you should be able to demonstrably show that you have reduced business risk, or why are you doing it, right?
Exactly.
So that's it.
So kind of, Rick, for companies trying to improve APT defense, where do you think they should start?
Wow, that's a big question, right?
Yeah, I know.
I think that for small to medium size, startup up to about medium, they probably don't have the resources to do it unless a vendor they like gives it to them, right?
Yeah.
So,
or they outsource. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to outsource it.
Yeah.
But if you're a medium to Fortune 500 company, you absolutely have the resources for it.
Oh yeah.
Right, and you have to decide if the effort gives you enough material risk reduction that you can pay for it, compared to the other strategies that you're pursuing. So I'm not saying it is a slam dunk that everybody should do this. It is absolutely dependent on where you are, what your industry is, how big you are, right? And will this, by pursuing that strategy, does it help you even more? Those are the questions that leadership has to ask.
We talked about the kill chain before, but do you still think it's useful today, or does it need to be changed?
Oh no, the idea of it's absolutely true. The details of it may change.
Yeah.
So we get smarter about it. But if you just think about it, how bad guys go after new victims, they have to accomplish a series of steps. That's what the kill chain paper outlined. So it's basically recon. Bad guy recons your network they look for weaknesses. And then the second step is they develop tools that will leverage those weaknesses. And then the third step is they deliver those tools to victim zero to try to break in. And if they're successful, then they still have to do a bunch of other things, right? And one of the things they do is expand their reach inside the victim's network. They move laterally, trying to compromise as many machines as they can, looking for the data they've come to steal or destroy. And then the last step is they exfiltrate it out through some command and control channel. Now, Lockheed Martin invented that or wrote about it, 25 years ago, and those steps are essentially the same, but with a lot more detail involved.
You're right. I think you're right. I think the steps have stayed the same. Yeah, they might have gotten a little more. You're right. A little more detail about the process they're doing, but the lateral propagation, the exfiltration, everything still seems to be the same.
Yeah, it's not that hard when you say it out loud, right? But the technical piece of doing all that and not getting caught, right? And that's harder to do, right?
In some cases, there are also the threat actors trying to target VPs or execs, for example, and
Yeah.
it can go beyond.
Well, let me tell you the reason this is so important, though. This rethinking of defense. Prior to the Lockheed Martin paper, you would hear security professionals say something like this: uh, "Bad guys only have to be successful once, where network defenders have to be successful every single time."
Okay.
Okay, that is incorrect when you use the intrusion kill chain defense strategy, because if you're putting multiple prevention controls across the kill chain in your environment, even if the bad guy gets past one of them, they still have to get past the 99 others that you put in place, right?
Yeah.
So advantage is to us, all right, in that regard. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying advantage comes to us.
Yeah. So, Rick, do you think known adversary playbooks still work in kind of this faster AI-driven threat environment today?
I think it's all going to be automated, right? So
Yeah.
I know the bad guys are going to automate their attack campaigns as much as they can. With large language models, they're going to be able to do that. That's already happening. So what's not happening at this very moment is automation on the defensive side.
Yes.
We are very reluctant to look at what, say, Wicked Spider does, automatically generate controls for our security stack, and then automatically deploy them because we're worried that we're going to break something, right? And that has been the case for 15 years.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to have to get over that little hump and take some extra risk so that we can keep pace with what the bad guys are doing.
That seems to go back, Alex, to that question the guy had about Claude Mythos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on, as we talk about AI-driven threat environment? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's inevitable. Someone
Yeah.
threw a large language model at finding vulnerabilities and then developing the exploit code that would go with it. It was inevitable that would happen. Mythos is interesting, is that it's a platform dedicated to that purpose,
Yes.
right? So to Anthropic's credit, the company that made it, they gave limited access to a certain number of organizations to try it out to see what it was doing. But if anybody has any illusions that bad guys aren't doing this on their own, that would be incorrect. I guarantee you that the big countries that already have that capability. China,
Guaranteed.
Iran, U.S.,
Yep. Guaranteed.
North Korea, pick your poison. They just weren't telling anybody about it, all right? So that it's already in play.
Yeah. So last question on this is, what does a good MITRE attack execution actually look like?
It is understanding adversary campaigns. That means that you have to have a robust intelligence shop who can put those things together, and it's several steps. First, you have to collect intelligence on, say, what Wicked Spider is doing, plus the other 499 attack campaigns, right? And keep those things straight. And then automatically develop prevention controls for the tools you have at your disposal against Wicked Spider. Get them tested in an environment so you don't break your business when you deploy them, and then deploy them. And then because of Mythos and what we think all the bad guys are doing, you're going to have to do that in seconds to hours, not months, right?
Yep.
So that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I was impressed about Mythos, what he found and how quick he found those vulnerabilities that were maybe 10 or even more than 10 years ago.
Oh, they're going to be people using a Mythos-like large language model, let's say the U.S., that they've already developed. All they have to do is point that thing at, software repositories around the world, all the open source repositories. And we're going to see a avalanche of new vulnerabilities pop out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? and exploit code. All right. So we live in interesting times.
Yeah, indeed. I can't say anything about that. Anyhow, I think I saw an article about Mythos, like NSA confirms to not use Mythos, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, they're not using Mythos. They already built their own. All right, so that's, if I was them, that's what I would do. Okay, so.
We'll see. We'll see. Okay, I'll go to the next segment, threat intelligence and awareness. What makes threat intelligence actually useful instead of just more noisy?
Well, I think there's a difference between threat intelligence and news. Right? It's one thing to read the headlines about some new attack. That's not intelligence. Right?
Yeah, correct. That's marketing, to be honest, or content marketing, to be honest.
Intelligence, all right, is looking at what, say, Wicked Spider did across the kill chain.
Yeah.
And putting it in a place that can be useful to your analysts, and then walking through all the steps to get prevention controls deployed. That's an intelligence process, right? And most people don't have that in their organizations.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, there are companies which they have, and some others not. But of course, it depends of what's the scope and the goal of the organization.
Yeah, and what their strategy is, right? If their strategy is intrusion kill chain, then they probably have a lot of resources pointed at it. But if it's at some other strategy, let's say zero trust, which is part of that passive strategy, it's not, not designed for any specific adversary, just prevent against all adversaries, then maybe they don't have anything pointed at that.
Because if you have mentioned already about zero trust, I don't know how many companies have that kind of approach. That's another discussion over there.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's one of my pet peeves, right? My entire career, most of us were just doing very tactical things. Didn't have a clear strategy in mind. And what I mean by that, we're old military guys here, right? So a strategy is the what we're trying to accomplish, not the how. Is the direction we are going. And the tactics are how we're going to pursue it. But if you ask many of our peers that are out there what their strategy is, they might choke on that answer. They probably don't have a good answer for that. Most of them, if you press them, they'll probably say something like, well, it's CIA, that we've been following for the last 30 years. But CIA is not really a strategy. It's more of a meme, right? So, so developing a strategy is probably a thing that everybody should have under their belt. Figure out what you're trying to do. Not just do a bunch of tactical things with no purpose.
Yeah. Go to the next question. What did you learn from helping build the Cyber Threat Alliance that still matters today?
Well, the Cyber Threat Alliance is an information sharing organization, right? Similar to the ISACs. I'm a big history buff. The ISACs were started back in the 1990s. The first one was the FS-ISAC in 1999. And the idea was that like-minded organizations could share threat intelligence with each other and other kinds of information that's useful, right? So that even if they are competitors in the business space, it made sense that like-minded organizations could share problems that everybody was experiencing, right? So that's kind of the idea of ISACs. There never was a ISAC for security vendors. All that time from the 1990s till when we stood up the Cyber Threat Alliance. So that's what we did, and I love this story. All right, let me tell it. It was my boss was Mark McLaughlin at Palo Alto Networks. He was the CEO. The CEO at Fortinet. What is it?
Fortinet.
Yeah. I play Fortnite, so I always get it screwed up, right? So
no worries.
Ken Z was the CEO over there, and there was a dispute between the two companies about some sort of intellectual property. And the lawyers on both sides were gearing up, and we're going to spend lots of money to go solve it in court. The two CEOs go to the local Starbucks, which was between the two headquarters. We could see each other's headquarters, okay, from the roofs of each other's buildings. And they said, instead of giving all that money to lawyers, why don't we just do something good for the industry? And what they decided on was to build an ISAC for cybersecurity vendors, right?
Okay.
And so, and I was one of the people that helped put that together. Um, what we had, the biggest obstacle that we had to get over was to get everybody to believe that we were not in it to hurt our competitors, that we were generally in it to help the industry out, that it made sense that if Cisco found a vulnerability in some new thing, that they should share it with some other vendor so that they could protect their customers also. Right. So that took a long time to get over that hurdle, but once that was set, that was the major learning point.
In my mind, when it is mentioned cyber threat alliance, it's something with certs that we have at the Europe level between the EU member states. So
yeah,
the certs
are really good at doing that kind of thing. The U.S. was not that good at it back in the '90s, right? So ISACs emerged to fill that space, but they have mutually supporting missions, I think.
I see. Okay. What is the difference between having lots of security data and having real awareness? Many people are saying, okay, awareness, but what kind of awareness do we have over there in the end?
Are you talking, let me make sure I understand the question. Are you asking, do people know where their most important data is that the question?
Yes. In the first part, yes. And then what kind of awareness do we have for that?
I would say the answer is no.
Straight no.
It goes back to what my first principle is. What's the probability of a material cyber event? Material is the key point. Not everything in your network is important, right? If the bad guys steal the lunch menus from the company cafeteria and exfiltrate it out to Tajikistan, nobody cares, all right? Nothing's going to happen, right? But if you're Coca-Cola and the bad guys steal your recipe, their secret recipe, that'd be material to the business.
Might be a problem over there.
Right. So, but the problem is that most of my peers don't think of it in those terms, right? I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of us don't know what's material to the business and what's not. And that's something that you don't do by sitting in your cubicle or in the SOC by yourself. You got to go out and talk to the business leaders and say, what is driving this business? What needs to be up all the time so that this business can thrive? If you haven't asked those questions, you're probably very far behind.
Yeah.
It's funny, Alex, we talk about that, where other people we've spoken to about the poor communication between the security team and the business team and how that impacts the security within the organization.
It goes back to what I said at the beginning. The business leaders let us get away with thinking that security was different.
Yeah.
Right. And they have let us do that for 30 years. And it's time to get away from that.
Yeah.
I think similar discussion we had with Dr. Eric Cole, if you remember, Aaron.
Oh yeah, Eric's, exactly.
yeah, that was exactly it.
I'll go to the last question, and then I'll pass it to Aaron. AI, automation, and modern enterprise defense. How do you tell whether an adversary playbook is actually actionable?
There's a couple of ways, right? The first is, are you seeing it on your network? Okay, one of the things I would automate with these large language models, okay, is I would have a huge dashboard that lists all the adversary campaigns.
Correct.
500 that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So with your tool set, whatever you have deployed, if you see it fire on one of the things that say Wicked Spider does, remember we said Wicked Spider has maybe, I don't know if that's true. I'm just throwing that out there, right? But if we see one of them on our network, probably not Wicked Spider. But if you see 80 of the 100, it's Wicked Spider. And maybe you should make sure all your controls for Wicked Spider are in place so you're preventing it from working. So that's the first one. Look at your own network and see if you can detect Wicked Spider in your network. And then secondary is what are all the vendors saying in their public blogs, right? And when they're intel shops, and you're right, Alex, it's marketing for their product, but they're also very good intel people. So when they describe wicked spider attacking some new victim, pay attention to that. That means they're active.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I mean, everything it's in the internet publicly, to be honest, can be exploited.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right.
Aaron?
Sure. So, Rick, the question is, are we finally at a real turning point for automation, or are we kind of repeating old mistakes with AI?
Wow. Yes and yes and yes, right? So let me just tell you, let me repeat the mistake we're making, right? For 30 years, we had to learn the lesson. This is before AI, right?
Yeah.
For 30 years, we had to learn the lesson that you shouldn't let code and data intermingle, right? If you let data execute code, that's when you get owned, right? So, and it took us a long time to learn that lesson, and we finally did about 4 years
Yeah.
ago.
And then it all changed.
It's in the OWASP top 10 that you shouldn't let that happen again,
Yeah.
right? So, but when you're talking about large language models, we just went back to it, right? Because you just give it a text phrase and it goes off and executes things. It's code and data all over again. So we're back to that part again, and I don't know how we fix that, right? I don't have an answer for that. What was the other part of the question? Because I had an answer for that too, I think.
It said the question was: Are we finally at a turning point for automation? Or
Oh,
yes,
yes. I think so, right?
Yeah.
When DevOps came around maybe 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and DevSecOps started to become popular, I thought that your security team would switch over to being automators first and security people second. I just thought that was going to happen. That's completely wrong, right? We did not adopt automation at all. We bought tools that helped us do automation, like Sing tools and things like that, but we don't, security people up to this point are not really automators, right? And I think that is a big detriment to our community. With the advent of large language models, we are at the precipice that could change. Anybody can now write code to automate some of the tasks that you have. Now, I'm not going to make a bold AI because I was wrong the last time, but it is definitely easier now than it was back in those days, right? And my advice to all the youngsters out there is you heard that everybody's going to lose their jobs because of AI. The way you make your job is you stay relevant and you know how to make that stuff work and sync, right? And so dive in, everybody, because that is the future of cybersecurity, I believe.
Boy, I've been telling my son the same thing. I said, don't fight it, join it. At this point, it's going to change it. So
If you're
learn
not
it as
playing
much
with
as you possibly can.
ChatGPT or Claude Code or
Exactly.
what's Claw, whatever that one is.
Open call.
If you're not playing with any of that, you're
Yeah.
already behind.
Yeah. So, we get this question all the time. How do you see AI changing the way attackers operate?
How do I see it? They're just like everybody else. I just want to make this bold statement too. AI is really just elevated automation,
Yes.
right? And so it's easier to automate things now. And we all know that automation makes your life easier because now you've standardized on a way to do it and you can just rerun it over and over and over again. You don't have to do it manually. So absolutely, bad guys are going to do that, right? And I don't know if I answered the question, but the benefit that they get is they get to reduce the toil that takes to write adversary campaigns, right?
Yes.
It's going to be as manual.
To me, it looks about speed.
Yep.
Same here.
Yeah. All about speed and volume.
It's going to be speed and volume. That's absolutely true. But I will say that I don't think it's not a panic point yet. Okay.
No.
It's just the next evolution of where automation is. And the way I like to think about it, are you guys superhero nerds? Because I am. Anything with a superhero. I'm in. Okay. So
it depends which side you're on. Are you the Batman guy? Are you the other side?
I am are you
the Marvel guy or are you the DC guy?
I've been a Marvel guy forever, but I will say
there we go.
the Superman movie that came out last summer.
It was
It's
great.
really good. It's
It was
really good.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
But in Avengers Endgame, okay, Tony Stark has to invent time travel, because
Yeah.
reasons, right?
Yep.
So when he's writing the application for time travel, he's not slinging C code. He's not doing C++. He's talking to an AI and says, "Hey, I need this and I need this thing over here and I need this kind of thing and give me a whatever and see if that works." And 2 minutes later, time travel, right? And what I mean by all that is that's kind of where we are with Claude Code and ChatGPT, right? It is just the next level of abstraction. When I started learning this stuff, we had to learn, machine code,
Yeah.
ones, zeros, and nobody understood what that meant except for the deep nerd levels, at the 100th level.
Oh
And
yeah.
then we elevated it to a machine language, which is a little bit better, still hard to do. And then we got to modern programming languages like COBOL and Pascal, and then it was easier, but still hard to do. And now we're at the next level where we can just give it English and it will do what you want it to do. So it's exciting and scary all at the same time.
Because we spoke about speed, we don't have to forget about quantum.
Well,
Oh gosh,
nice.
yeah.
What I'm
Yeah,
saying.
Yeah. We had a whole interview on quantum computing and the new encryption standards with NIST.
Well, I'll give you my 2 cents here, right? The next milestone in AI is artificial general intelligence. Okay?
Yes, AGI. Yep.
Right? AGI. And what that means is the large language models aren't going to be good at some things and bad at others. They're going to be good at all the things that humans can do, all of them, right?
Yep.
All the AI companies are predicting that we'll hit that milestone in 3 to 5 years. That's probably marketing, but it's probably within 10 years, okay? So let's say we hit AGI in 2035. As soon as we point an AGI, artificial general intelligence model, at the quantum problem, we will exponentially solve that problem. Okay, exponentially, right?
Yes.
So it's coming sooner than later, I think.
Rick, I recommend 2 movies over here. One is
Yes.
The Creator, which I really like it. The Creator is about a kid who have access to everything in terms of AI. And then the second movie, which Aaron already knows, is Mercy, where
Mercy.
the AI is a lawyer.
I haven't seen
that's
either of those. Okay.
I recommend
Oh,
both
that's
of
the
them.
new. That's the new one. Am I correct, Alex?
Yeah. It's with Rebecca Ferguson.
Oh,
For
that's
those who-
yeah. It's on my list. I can't wait.
and Chris
Yeah.
Pratt, if I'm
Yes,
not
yes.
wrong.
That's what's Chris Pratt. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either. I want to see it.
So I recommend to anyone who's not aware of that. It's very interesting what you'll see. Also, when we humans will live with robots or humanoids, which you'll see in the Creator movie. And then, of course, how you'll be in a trial with a judge, and that judge is an AI,
Yeah.
which is the
Yikes.
Mercy movie.
Yikes. What could go
You could just
wrong?
read Isaac Asimov's books. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? So, Rick, next question for you. What has made modern enterprise defenses harder? Do you think it's cloud, identity, SaaS, or third-party dependence?
Well, it's all that stuff. It's the reason it's gotten harder is it's a lot. Okay, when I said
Yes.
back in the 1990s, we had 3 tools. We were all protecting our own digital enterprise. There were, that was it. We had our own little network. We had a little firewall that blocked us from the internet. And back then we thought that was hard, right? But all
Yes.
the things that you just said, expanding into cloud, expanding into multiple clouds, and now if you want to include
Yep.
large language models using their platforms to do what we want to do, that's more cloud. Not to mention all the SaaS applications, okay, and then what you said also, all the third-party attacks. The reason it's hard is that it's a lot, and it's tough to get
It's
your
a
hand
lot.
around all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So last question before I know Alex, I know we're getting at, it's almost at 12:45 at this point. How do you make zero trust real instead of just another buzzword?
Is that to Alex or to me?
Oh no, I'll do the both because Alex loves zero trust.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's he's done multiple sessions on zero trust.
I will just say again, zero trust is a strategy,
Yes.
Yeah,
right? It's also not something you're ever going to finish. You've heard the buzzword, it's a journey, not a destination,
exactly. Yeah,
right? However, in order to do zero trust, the thing that you absolutely have to have in place is identity and access management.
correct.
Because if you don't have that, you can't know who's touching what pieces of data, right?
Yes.
And so you can't even get out of the starting blocks unless you have identity and access management. And I want to be clear here, okay? Identifying the person is only one part of the problem,
Yeah,
and we know how to do that for the most part, right? And when I say identify the person, I mean the person, the application, um, the whatever's running. We know how to do that fairly well. We've had that technology for a long time. Managing what they have access to, though, we are not good at that,
Yeah.
right? And it's tough, right? And it changes all the time. When Alex changes jobs and laterals over to the other department, he normally gets the same permissions that he had at his last job and his new job, right?
Of
So,
course. Yeah, yeah.
right now, we can automate all that, and maybe large language models can help us, but that's the sticking point, I think, for getting zero trust done. I don't know, Alex. What do you think? You've heard all the people talk about it.
we talked with George Finney. I don't know if you have
Oh,
heard
that,
of
yeah,
him.
that was fantastic.
Yeah. He was fantastic on the zero trust, but also with another person from one of the European executive agencies, with Robert. Aaron knows him as well, and I mean, it's a lot on the zero trust. First, yeah, we have the YAM, so identity access management that you already mentioned. We have the PAM, the privileged access management, which is also needed for the tools, for having the access to those tools. I mean, whatever you have into your infrastructure, could be that database, could be switches, could be firewalls, load balancers, and so on. You need to have a tool to have access to those, not to have access directly. That's not
Right.
the right way.
Right.
And I know there are a lot of companies that they're using the easiest way instead of having a tool who's recording all those comments, all those things, changes that you are doing, and I don't know why. I mean, in the end, if you have a data leak, you don't know why you had that.
Yeah, and those are table stakes. I used to
Yeah.
tell everybody, just for their home security purposes, the one thing that could probably help them more than anything else was to not run as the administrator, right?
Yeah.
Make a second account that just has normal permissions and
Yeah.
only use the admin account when you need to install stuff, right?
Yes.
But those are table stakes. And like I said, we've had the technology to do that for a long time. But managing permissions, that's hard, and we're not very good at that.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
time consuming too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, George Finney wrote Project Zero Trust. That is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
cybersecurity canon Hall of Fame book, right? So we highly recommend his book for everybody.
Yeah, we're going to get him back on again. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's switch to Alex before we close, but I definitely want to leave, Alex, make sure we leave kind of minutes in the end, Rick, because I definitely want you to talk about kind of what you're doing now with your company and everything else too. So Alex, go ahead.
Okay. I'll go with the first question on the leadership, risk, and closing. What's over there? So, what cyber risk measures actually matter most to leaders today, Rick?
It's the bottom line. Okay. It is when I say we're measuring material risk, that means that the company leadership has to know what is a material loss to their business. What I mean by that is you can have some losses up to a certain amount of point, and yes, it'll be painful, but it won't kill the company, right? Well, what is that dollar value for your company that if you lost it, it goes out of business? And that's the extreme answer. There's also any something a little bit less than that to the left side of that could be material too. But just to think of it in easy terms, if it makes your company go out of business, that's material, and that's the risk we should be measuring.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. And how should organization balance prevention with resilience and recovery?
Well, I think resilience is a different strategy, right? We talked about zero trust as a strategy. We talked about intrusion kill chain as a strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
Resilience is a different strategy, and it's completely different than those other two. All right. Resilience doesn't care really if you get hit. Resilience is putting infrastructure in place so that even if you get hit by a ransomware attack or you lose access to all your data, your customers never notice it because you are so good at recovering from that. Your business just keeps going. And what that means is you're good at things like backups and restores and crisis management, right? You're not dealing with adversary campaigns. You're not dealing with identity and access management. You're just really good at recovering from a disaster, right? I'm going to show all my cards here to you guys, all right? For most organizations, and especially startups to medium-sized companies, resilience is probably the best strategy for everybody. It's cheaper. You could get it done, right? And your business leaders will love it. Okay,
You remind me about my ex-CIO when we done on the resilience part for the banking.
yeah.
How many tests we had over there, and how many nights we lost.
Because you have to practice, right?
Oh, yeah, I know.
You just can't back up everything and hope you remember how to restore it. You got to be practicing every day, like Netflix used to do with their Chaos Monkey stuff, right? So
yeah. My next question. What is one thing a CISO listening today should go back and change?
My recommendation for all CISOs is to write down what they think their strategy is.
Okay.
Right? And then show it to all their direct supports. And once he gets it where he likes it or where she likes it, she needs then to walk it up to the senior executive one-on-one and talk to them about that.
Yeah, I
See
will.
if they're okay with it, right? And then once they get everybody on board, then they can walk it up to the board and say, okay, this is what we're trying to do.
Okay. Aaron, I will pass to you.
So this is good. So we have, I know, 7 minutes left. I know we have a couple questions that we'll kind of go into here. But actually, let's go into this one. I see from, it's a long one though, from Joseph Bame. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. I'm sorry. He goes, do the new federal router and edge device restrictions create a realistic pathway for more domestic production and broader commercial opportunities?
Is he talking about the specific, we're outlying routers from specific companies? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I wonder if he's talking, well, he might be referencing I guess they blocked the certain routers from certain countries.
Yeah, but not Russia, I think is what I heard. Okay. So, I don't know if I'm answering the right question, but I think it's a lot of politics and dealing with a bunch of tactical stuff, right? If you're talking about the enterprise, you're not going to have any of those cheap routers in your enterprise.
Yeah,
anyway,
sure.
Right. So now for home users, it could get a little dicey. And if you are the CIA director and you have really strong networks at headquarters, but you have a cheap router at your house, we might want to discuss that. All right. But I don't think it affects the major enterprise or government networks going forward. I hope I answered the question. Yep.
No, that's good. That's good. So what we'll do is I'm going to have one closing question, and then Rick, that's going to give you time to I want you to promote anything you're kind of working on right now. That'd be great.
Sure.
And the last question from Alex and I would be like, what is one cybersecurity myth you wish would go away for good?
Oh, my pet peeve on this is the CIA triad, right?
Okay.
Most people don't understand the origin of the CIA triad.
Confidentiality,
And
integrity, and
the
availability.
reason that we have it, right? We didn't really have it, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It was mentioned in all the early papers in the 70s and 80s by all the really smart cyber people, but it wasn't really put into a triad until the early 1990s when an NSA guy presenting at an IEEE conference mentioned it in the paper. He didn't put it into a triad. He just said these three things go together. And then 4 or 5 years later, ISC Squared made it mandatory for their CISP certification that you had to know what those three things were. And thus the CIA triad was born. And everybody glommed onto it like that was the most important thing ever in cybersecurity. And it just isn't, okay?
Yeah.
It's important, okay? Those things, yeah, you should pursue those. It's not a strategy though. And even if you accomplish whatever that is, you still have 100 things else you got to do, all right? So to answer your question, the biggest myth to get rid of is the CIA triad is not your strategy.
You know what's funny over there, Rick? There was an article, I think, in 2025 October, for those who doesn't know, where on the CSO website they were saying the CIA triad, I mean confidentiality, integrity, and availability, is dead or obsolete.
Yeah.
And over there it's explaining why it's obsolete. It's obsolete for the current era as we are now with AI and with what is coming next.
It's just that it's a framework, right?
Yeah.
It's not really useful, all right? So that's why it's obsolete, right? What is coming, what I've been trying to change the minds of my peers about is the thing we should be focusing on is reducing material risk for the organization. And by the way, that's not just for commercial organizations. That's for government organizations and for academic institutes. It's a little bit harder for those guys because they're not centered on money, right? But even government organizations know what's material to them. They're spending money to protect things.
Of course.
Being able to articulate that is important.
And for those who doesn't know, the CIA triad, it's based on three layers. The first one is the foundation of technical trust. The second one, complementary governance and rights, and the third one, contextual, which is societal and sector impact. So very important for those who doesn't know. That's it from my side. I don't know.
So Rick, I know you're traveling and you're busy. And we've already taken up near an hour of your time, so I don't want to keep on taking up any more. So thank you so much, but can you please kind of tell us what you're doing right now, any promotion you have? We would love to hear it.
I am the CEO of an all-volunteer nonprofit called the Cybersecurity Canon Project. That's canon with one N as in canon of literature, not two N's where you blow stuff up, all right? And we've been doing this for about 10 years. Think of it as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for cybersecurity books. What we started with a bunch of friends of mine who read books, made recommendations, wrote a review and said, this book belongs into one of three categories. Hall of Fame, meaning it's a book that if you haven't read yet, you probably have a hole in your education. The second category is niche, meaning it's still a good book, but maybe not everybody has to read it. Like it might be a book on industrial control systems. Still a great book, but not everybody has to know about it.
Interesting.
And the third category, and probably the service we give back to the community, is do not read, because there's lots of crap cyber books out there. And if you're going to take time to read one, don't read a bad one, right? So the vision of the Canon Project is to be the first source for curated and timeless cybersecurity wisdom. So if you're looking to learn something new or resharpen the sword for something you thought you knew, go check out the Canon website, look that book up, and we can tell you what books you should be reading. And having said that, like I said, it's all volunteer. So if you guys want to throw money at my way so I can keep it running, that'd be one thing. And I need volunteers. Okay, we made it a nonprofit 2 years ago. We started with 5 volunteers. Today we have 37 volunteers.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so it's a small startup and those people do things that typical startups do, like marketing and IT and finance and legal stuff, just to keep the company going. And then we have the committee that reads the books. We have over 50 senior people like us on this call that do all the reading and write the book review. So it's just under 100 people making this thing go. And if you're interested in helping, reach out to me and I will get you involved in the Cybersecurity Canon Project.
That's fantastic. Rick, thank you so much for your time. We're going to end this. Rick, if you just want to stay on just for 1 second.
Sure.
It probably processes a little bit when it does it, but thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for joining.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Alex, thank you.